Alright, this next one is from Mentis Wave. It's called Manic, Pixie, Dreamgirls. How VTubers accidentally debunked woke ideologues. So let's see what this thing has to say about the VTubers. You know, I myself am a VTuber. When one gender is mistreated, the other ends up becoming disenfranchised as well. Okay. Imran Khan, the futurist.
Hey internets, one of the more bizarre questions out there is something I like to refer to as the VTuber question. Are VTubers cringe and degenerate? Or are they fine examples of just pure, harmless, youthful fun?
I'd say it's a combination of both.
The answer to which is all pretty subjective and something you can argue either way. But what's more interesting is a question that often comes packed with the VTuber question, which is, are VTubers political? And that question often gets swept.
I'd say that depends on the VTuber. Not all VTubers are political. There are some VTubers who absolutely refuse to have anything political on their platform, their channel, their stream, whatever. But there are some who don't mind it and some who actively talk about it. It depends on the VTuber. Me, I don't actively talk about it. I don't mind it on my channel, but I don't go seeking it out.
Under the rug with usually the milquetoast answer, which is that, oh, it just depends on the VTuber. Some VTubers like Kirsch focus on politics a lot, then you have others like Pippa who are occasionally political, and then you have fun little moments like this one.
What do you think of men who get cooked?
I think that's really sad. They should beat their wives.
I remember that clip. Oh, Fillion.
Peachy, isn't it? But honestly, most of them tend to avoid the subject of politics entirely, unless it's in the context of a joke. Like, for example, Iron Mouse reacting to AI of Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Oh, God. Oh, the AI presidents playing video games. That is... The ones I ran into on TikTok a long time ago were them, you know, doing, like, GTA or Call of Duty. I thought it was the most hilarious thing ever. It is gold. I recommend checking it out. It is fucking hilarious.
Playing video games, which is political, but obviously just satire, which is honestly a smart position for most VTubers to take. Treat politics as something to laugh at, instead of taking a serious stance, so that way they don't alienate half their audience. And so that's the answer you're gonna usually get when you ask the question of are VTubers political. But that's not where I'm taking this. There's a much more interesting way to answer this question, which is to interpret it as, are VTubers inherently political? Is there something about VTubers?
No. I wouldn't say VTubers are inherently political. I don't know. Like I said, it depends on the person behind the VTuber. They are not inherently political.
That has inadvertently proven something about modern culture through their rise and success that most people wouldn't even notice or even think about. That perhaps
I would never eat a tomato. I would never Alex Jones. I love blonde people. I would die on a sword for you guys. I would give my brain transplant with your consent. I would give you my brain transplant as a consent, with your consent. I am nothing but a simp on the track. Kerchow, Lightning McQueen is king. What the hell, Fillion?
there's an experiment that all VTubers have been participating in, whether they know it or not, which handedly disproves a major mainstream media narrative. Intentional logical fallacies are used by various media pundits all the time, which is why I am partnered with Ground News. Different media sources
of course,
report the same story in ways that makes it look like the exact opposite of what's going on is true. And Ground News helps you see through this bias by compiling thousands of articles and organizing them by their bias and political meaning, with features designed mainly to save you time in comparison to if you were to try and do this by yourself. For example, there are many articles going around this month on what's going to happen to Donald Trump's legal troubles and criminal charges since he became president-elect last month. Kind of puts a whole damper on the whole thing, doesn't it? And Ground News provides a lot of features to help you easily sort through these articles and see through the bias. First off, it gives a nice summary of the issue. Prosecutors don't want judges to toss out Trump's criminal conviction, but recognize that keeping it going would be difficult since he's now president-elect. So,
you know, since I've been alive, I don't think I've seen a president more attacked socially or any other way than Donald Trump. I have not heard more about Donald Trump or any other fucking president than Donald Trump in both his terms now. He's fucking everywhere. People can't stop talking about him.
So they are instead trying to stall the case. It also gives a summary of different sources reporting on the topic. Right-leaning sources seem to suggest that prosecutors are obsessed, going too far that the whole thing is lawfare. Center sources simply state the DA wants to pause the case but uphold the conviction until he leaves office. And left sources like MSNBC reported as if bad orange man is using his election win to evade justice. If you were to ask me, the whole thing is dumb since it was a victimless crime anyways. But ground news can help you come to your own conclusion. It lets you easily see which sources are reporting and how, such as with this handy bias distribution chart, or with things like this that let you see who owns the media sources reporting on the topic. You can also click on a source to be taken directly to their version of the article, or find similar articles quickly and easily via the similar news topics feature. There's also blind spot, which lets you see at a glance topics that are being ignored or underreported by various media sources based on how far to the left or right they lean, which lets you see things that you might ordinarily miss due to the reporting bias. Lastly, Ground News is independent and subscriber funded, so to get the same features I have, you can go to ground.news/MentisWave or scan my QR code to now get 50% off the Vantage plan, which gets you unlimited access. But anyways, the answer to that question, have VTubers accidentally proven something about our culture that mass media doesn't really want to talk about, is in fact a very large yes. And it's something that starts to reveal itself when you start to examine the phrase Manic, Pixie, Dreamgirl. A fantastic example of how modern cultural critique is filled with a lot of really dumb ideas that are both largely misandrous towards men, but interestingly, in this particular case, it's also something that has a side effect of being severely damaging to young women, in that it preaches to young ladies a false narrative that, when taken seriously, will result in them making a series of really bad and dumb decisions that will ultimately ruin her life and destroy any romantic prospects she may have. And VTubers have just kind of accidentally proven just how stupid this concept is. So what exactly is a Manic Pixie Dreamgirl, you may ask? I'm sure some people who clicked on this video already have a basic concept of it, but
Is a stock character type in films. I can't really read that very well.
Manic Pixie Dreamgirl is a trope, a character archetype of something commonly found in fiction, although can occasionally exist outside of it. And the character usually has the following traits. The first is that they are eccentric or has a quirky personality, not like the other girls type. They're also young, female, and usually single, and so in fiction she will usually be the romantic interest or the hero of the story. She also often has interests and hobbies that are less common for a woman of her age. She's usually optimistic and positive about life, although this rule can be broken if it's in line with her eccentric nature. And lastly, she usually ends up teaching the hero of the story something about life. She either helps him get on his feet, provides him with some kind of motivation, or again just serves as the basic love interest of the story. So basically she's quirky, she's positive, she's fun, she's different. And she's also, strangely enough, an archetype that you can easily apply to, well, pretty much every single successful VTuber. So I actually found that it was harder to find a VTuber that doesn't fit under the Manic Pixie Dreamgirl label. The vast majority of the VTubing industry can be understood as young girls, usually with a fun and upbeat disposition, using an anime model instead of just being a cam girl, and they usually have some kind of eccentric or unique backstory to their character. There's some men out there who are VTubers, but mostly it's young women, usually women under the age of 35. And what VTubers mostly do is provide entertainment in a manner that is mostly pandering to a male audience. So they'll do things like streaming video games or reacting to internet memes while being quirky and fun. The only real difference.
A lot of them are pretty quirky and fun, and a lot of them are fucking insane. It's amazing. I find it really amazing that a lot of these VTubers can keep up that high energy the entire time they stream. Because me just seeing that, it just looks exhausting. I don't know how you can keep up that amount of energy for that long. I mean, I'd probably get exhausted just a few hours in trying to keep up that high-end energy. I mean, I'm a pretty chill person. I'll probably have high energy a couple of times, but I can't do that for hours on end. I would be fucking mentally exhausted beyond belief. So, I mad respect to those VTubers that can actually keep up that energy for hours on end. Especially those who do like subathons and such that can keep that up throughout the entire time. mad respect to those who can do that.
Difference here is, again, they're not entirely fictional. There is a real person behind the model. But at the same time, they're still somewhat playing a character. I mean, most of them break character all the time, and only occasionally play within their role. In many ways, VTubers are just female streamers using an anime character. But the point is,
I think the VTubers that stay within character the most are the ones that are under an industry, like Niji Sanji, or Hololive, or Phase Connect, I think. They're the industry ones are mainly the ones that always stay in character. It's the indie VTubers one that just have a character but still just be themselves. They sometimes will play into a character, but most of the time they're just themselves.
the successful ones at least, nearly all fall under the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype, which is very, very interesting, because the thing about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is that it's also an archetype that is very deeply hated by the sort of neo-Marxist woke progressive types. And they of course use the usual prog snarl words. It's problematic, or it's sexist, or that it's harmful in some way, because, you know, it hurt their subjective feelings, so therefore it's harmful. Their logic is flawless. Don't question it, don't think about it, just accept it. And they've been talking about this for much longer than VTubers have been a thing, and so VTubers aren't really their go-to example. Instead, they complain about characters...
Feminist Frequency, yeah. Great channel, 10 out of 10. That's sarcasm for those who couldn't figure that out.
Usually in mainstream movies like Summer from, you know, Days of Summer, or Sam from Garden State, or Ruby from Ruby Sparks. And their complaints about it are as follows. The first is that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl only exists to help the male hero out of depression, and that she is therefore just a tool to be used to this end. The second complaint is that she has no life of her own, and often her family has no part in her depiction. Also, she has no will of her own, and just goes along with whatever men want her to do, which is then used to imply that she's failing to pursue her own happiness, and that she's helping men grow while experiencing no growth herself, and that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is just in general unrealistic. Overall, the main complaint here seems to be just woke progressive feminists screeching that women are not objects that exist to help men or inspire them or make men happy or whatever.
Ma objectification, misogynies, my institutional systematic oppression. My male's bad. Ma. So fucking stupid.
And that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype somehow implies that they are. Now, like all midwit takes, there is a base level of truth in these people whining about Manic Pixie Dream Girls, because unrealistic characters to serve as romantic interest absolutely do exist, and they can get pretty darn cringe. For example, a common trope you might see in romance novels written for women is an alpha male Giga Chad with supernatural powers, taking interest in a totally ordinary, normal, boring girl for basically no reason, and he then proceeds to take care of her and protect her throughout the story for, again, basically no reason. Twilight is usually given as the basic example of this, but it happens a lot. And on the flip side, you can also find unrealistic female characters in things like Japanese harem anime, where an extremely boring male character, with no personality so to speak, that always looks like Shinji for some reason, gets his pick of a slew of extremely attractive female characters who all have the hots for him for basically no reason whatsoever. He just kind of exists, and suddenly all these girls who have been designed to have absolutely no unattractive traits in them whatsoever suddenly all want him. And it's true that these tropes can be bad, however, they're not exactly sexist and harmful, at least not to the gender they represent. Rather, they're usually harmful more so to the people reading them. The problem with these kind of characters is that
there are some people who read these things and they can take it as thinking that they are able to get this stuff and they are able to have this in real life. They get this sort of wild fantasy-like idea that, hey, maybe maybe this can happen in real life to me. It's like, it's not realistic. Just, keep it in the book.
They're wish fulfillment characters. They give young readers an extremely unrealistic expectation for the opposite sex, which can absolutely lead to people becoming cold and alone. I mean, there's a reason why harem anime is often laughed at as a genre of anime that is mainly for virgins, because it kinda is, to be honest. A really basic red pill advice for young men is that you can't just sit around and wait for some 10 out of 10 pure-hearted female with absolutely no flaws about her whatsoever to just magically take an interest in you and do all the work and just want you for no reason. That just doesn't happen. Rather, what happens most of the
God, it would be great if it does happen, though. I know it doesn't. It's not realistic. We live in reality here, so that shit like that doesn't actually happen. You have to be actually interesting.
Time is that you end up with the partner you earn. So in reality, you have to become the kind of man that the kind of woman you want finds attractive. And of course, the same thing is true in reverse. If a woman is not attractive to the kind of man that she finds attractive, she's not going to get that man. There are exceptions to this basic rule, but most of the time, you can't just do nothing and have your perfect dream partner fall into your life. You have to actually do something. And in many ways, it's very similar to economics. You have to offer people something that they want in order to get what you want. And there's another channel known as Home Math that kind of goes into this extensively when talking about relationship advice.
Home Math. Love that channel. It's great. He's very realistic about shit.
A big problem with the dating market is that too many people are going into it only thinking about what they can get out of it, rather than going into it thinking about what they have to give, or what exactly is it about you that makes you a good partner. And I have a special understanding of this because one thing people might not know about me is that I'm actually a married man. I normally would never bring this up, and I normally don't really talk about myself much because it doesn't really matter in the context of philosophical or political channel. But it is relevant because I can point out one very simple fact about a lasting marriage, which is that you have to care about what your partner wants. You have to care about their well-being. In order for love to work and for it to last, you have to wake up every day thinking about what you have to give, rather than just what you can get out of your partner. If I didn't care about my wife's well-being, or if she didn't care about my...
Yeah, you can't go into a relationship expecting everything to be handed to you without ever doing any sort of reciprocation for what you are getting. You can't just receive without ever giving in return. That's just not how shit works. It may work for a little bit, but in the end it's gonna blow up in your fucking face. And it's not gonna be pretty.
My well-being, it wouldn't work. You both have to genuinely respect each other's will, almost as if it were your own. And so that is just kind of the basic nugget of truth that exists within this critique of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype that we're seeing from these neo-Marxist woke progressive feminist types. The problem is, and where they completely screw up and get it all completely backwards, is that what they're whining about isn't actually unrealistic at all. I decided to watch some of the movies and look at some of the characters that are often called out as being Manic Pixie Dream Girls, and the only consistency I found is that they were women, they had some femininity and some quirkiness to their personality, they liked to have fun, and they didn't hate men. So to any woman out watching this, if you meet these four traits, congratulations, you apparently don't exist. So what we are seeing here is kind of the reverse problem. Rather than setting an unrealistically high bar for a potential partner, what we're really seeing here is an example of feminist critique going too far. They're setting an unrealistically low bar for women to go for. Or if you are anything other than a man-hating, scowling, strong woman who don't need no man, then you somehow represent a problematic, unrealistic standard. And that's, of course, completely ridiculous. It kind of reminds me of the male incel...
Yeah, there's... there's a lot of... let's see, it's mainly the feminist community. They fucking hate games like this where they think the woman's body proportions are fucking unrealistic when they're not. This woman's body proportions is not unrealistic whatsoever. It's completely realistic.
Community complaining about how women aren't interested in men who are poor, stupid, and short, or otherwise lack any masculinity in them whatsoever. Just because standards exist doesn't mean you're being oppressed. And look, I get it. It can be really hard to meet some of those standards, especially as a guy, because some of those standards are indeed a lot higher. But whining about it doesn't really change the fact that that bar exists. And going back to VTubers and examining them alongside the movies that get accused of having Manic Pixie Dream Girls in them, we can easily see how this bar isn't really that unrealistic at all. And a lot of the critique also has some really obviously faulty logic when you think about it, which really shouldn't surprise anybody, because one of the main central components of neo-Marxist philosophy is that they tend to view everything through the false dichotomy of victims and oppressors, when in reality social interaction is much more complicated than that. And as a result of this, they tend to commit false dichotomy fallacies and make bad faith arguments all the time. For example, one really stupid and very common false dichotomy is objectification. For example, attractive female characters in a story exist, or lots of YouTubers like to use sexy models. And therefore, men who enjoy that are objectifying them. They only view her as an object. But that's actually a false dichotomy. It is entirely possible, in fact very common, for a man to find a woman sexy and attractive and still respect her as a human being with human.
Yeah, the stupid thing is, it's like, a guy can't appreciate a woman who has who's beautiful or sexy, has a great body or whatever, instantly, when a man apparently thinks it's attractive or whatever, they are instantly labeled as somebody who only sees the person as a sex object. It's like, no, the woman is sexy. Can I not appreciate the sexiness of the lady before my eyes without you turning it into something sexual? Not all men only think about sex. We are able to appreciate the female form without it turning into something sexual. Men are able to do that, despite what, people think.
Human rights. Just because sex sells doesn't mean that men only view women as sex objects. You can absolutely find a woman sexy and still respect her. And yet whenever I see these radical feminist neo-Marxist critiques of art and literature and whatnot, they just automatically assume that any attractive female character is being objectified, which is objectively invalid reasoning. Those two scales are not tied together. Men's brains do not work in a way where the more attractive we see a woman, we then automatically have to see her as less of a human being. The personality scale and the look scale are entirely capable of going up and down independently of each other. And yet, because neo-Marxist philosophy tends to view the evil, straight, white male as the oppressor group, it is automatically always taken in bad faith, and so it is assumed that the evil, straight, white male must therefore be objectifying any woman who is found to be attractive, or any woman in art or literature who is attractive. And that's objectively not true. It's a false dichotomy fallacy. It's not a sustainable argument. And as I've just shown you, it falls apart very easily when examined. And here's the thing. The same thing is true for pretty much all the other complaints about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. For example, going back to VTubers. There are a lot of young, depressed men in Western society. That's just an unfortunate reality. And for many of them, watching VTubers helps them out of that depression. Does that mean they see the VTuber as just a tool to bring him out of depression? Just an object with no will of her own? Just a means to an end of that goal? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. That is just another false dichotomy. For the exact same reason, just because someone helped you out of depression doesn't mean you view them as a tool with no human agency of their own. That's ridiculous. And going back to mainstream movies, we then have to ask, so why is it that Sam in Garden State is therefore just an automatic objectified tool for helping Andrew out of depression? Why does that need to imply that she has no agency of her own? It really doesn't make any sense as soon as you realize that it's just all false dichotomy. And she's also not a perfect girl at all. She's not unrealistic. She has problems of her own. If you actually watch the movie, Sam has some pretty serious issues. Or how about the idea that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl has no life of her own? I mean, where's that even coming from? So because a girl doesn't open up about who she is and give us a massive backstory about everything in her life, then she has no life of her own? I mean, plenty of streamers, not just VTubers, and plenty of content creators don't talk about their life that much outside of what content they make. That doesn't imply that we have no life, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're only allowed to look at them as someone who has no life. Again, another stupid, bad faith, false dichotomy, where the evil, straight, white male is assumed to be a villain who only views others as a means to an end. And then the weirdest critique of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl has to be failing to pursue her own happiness. Because that's a case where it can be entirely reciprocal. Lots of people have fun making other people happy. That makes them happy. Having fun and being entertaining for others can be a mutually beneficial act, like with Summer in 500 Days of Summer. And all the silly antics that she's pulling, her character seems to be having just as much fun. In fact, in many cases, she seemed to have more fun than the male main character. And with VTubers, most of those girls stream for hours on end, and you can tell that they're genuinely enjoying it and having fun with their audience. Which then kind of brings you to another problem with neo-Marxist woke progressive thought, which is that they tend to have a very bizarre zero-sum mentality towards the world. They tend to think that one person's gain is another person's loss. One class is the victim, the other class is the oppressor. All again stemming from false dichotomies. And what ends up happening as a result of this is that the sort of radical neo-Marxist feminist types end up shaming any woman who doesn't hate men, which is probably why I see the word pick-misha often being thrown at VTubers. Now, on the surface of the word, pick-misha is defined.
Yeah, I know a few VTubers who have been labeled as a pick-me. Like, one of them is Kitsunero. She has been labeled a pick-me by plenty of people. It's just, I don't understand the pick-me mentality. It's just, they're being real. They're being honest. They're being truthful. They're grounded in reality. And the depression thing, it's like, a lot of these VTubers are helping a lot of guys out of the depression because, well, these female VTubers are fun. They're interactive. They make them laugh. They it's just, I don't get some of these people's mentality over hating VTubers so much, or hating female VTubers so much for just existing.
As a woman who devalues herself in order to get picked by men, or a woman who is constantly seeking validation from men. But the problem is, the word in practice generally gets used against any lady who happens to get along with men just fine, or just does something that the
I can never say Pippa as a pick-me-sha. She's just a gremlin on fucking crack. She is just nuts. But she's hilarious. She is, my god, she is nuts. She is psychotic, but she is awesome.
neo-Marxists don't like. For example, apparently Dipper Dog is a pick-me because she reacted to a video of men doing better than women at hunting, so she had fun laughing at one of the basic biological differences between male and female in humans. Apparently this is pick-me behavior. Or how about another example? Apparently Smug Elena is a pick-me for making fun of game journos over the whole Black Myth Wukong fiasco. Okay, so sometimes VTubers make fun of woketoids too, and that somehow makes them pick-me's. Gee, it's almost like pick-me isn't really a word that's used with any kind of consistency in regards to...
Yeah, the whole pick-me thing has really lost any sort of true meaning, because it has just been thrown out there so much that it's just, it's lost all its luster. It's lost any backing it's ever had. You can't just throw out pick me at any sort of woman or woman VTuber that you disagree with. You can't really explain what a pick me anymore is, because it's been used so much to the point where it's just like throwing a wet paper towel at somebody. It's not effective. It does nothing.
What it's supposed to be defined as. It's almost like it's just being used as shaming language against any woman who steps out of line and goes against the cult of woke. And the more you look into it, that seems to be exactly what's going on. Like another silly example, apparently every single VTuber who played Hogwarts Legacy, from Ikumi, Ipkin Pippa, is a pick-me girl for...
Oh God, I remember so many people are getting flamed for playing this game just because Harry Potter or Hogwarts is associated with what's her fucking name? I can't remember her name. But it's just, it's a fucking game. Let people play it.
Playing Hogwarts Legacy. Which is weird, because Hogwarts Legacy wasn't even really that anti-woke. It's just that the neo-Marxists have decided that...
I found the game kind of boring. I couldn't play it for very long. I found it really boring. I don't think it's a bad game. It's just, to me, it was boring.
For some reason, J.K. Rowling is literally the female reincarnation of Germany Bad Mustache Man, and therefore the game is problematic, and therefore every VTuber who plays it is a pick-me. The whole discourse surrounding it and how this word is used is just so completely unhinged and insane that I almost don't even need to point out the logical problems or the false dichotomies and bad faith assertions anymore. The inconsistency is just so obvious that it practically refutes itself. And if you don't believe me, try searching for the word pick-me on the internet and how it's used yourself. It seems to always be used against any woman who does anything nice for a man, any woman who sets any kind of standards for herself whatsoever, or just any girl who just does anything at all that the woke left doesn't approve of. That's probably why
I hold myself to a higher standard of behavior. She wants male approval. I'm a dumb bitch. Yeah, Smugalana and Kitsunero and that other one that he said. There's so many of them that I can't remember all their names. Yeah, they're all pick-me's. Oh, so bad. Just because they're grounded in reality and they can actually think logically that they're a fucking pick-me. And they're not putting men down just for being men. It's basically what they all sound like when they're saying you're a pick-me.
Smart move is to do what Pippa did, where she adopted the pick-me label for herself as her government.
Pickler, pickle, pipper, pick of pickled peppers, pick me, Pippa. But that's just... God, try and say that 5 times fast. Let's see. Pickle, pepper, pick of pickled pepper, pick me... I don't even think I said that right. Pickle, pepper, pick of... Pickle, pepper, pick of pickled peppers, pick me, Pippa. Yeah, I got it.
nickname. I would strongly advise this to any woman who finds herself being called a pick-me. Don't take it seriously. Just laugh and move on. And fortunately, it seems that most VTubers seem to understand this. The haters gonna hate mentality is likely the best move here. And so, what's the real conclusion here? Where am I going with this? And the answer to that is that VTubers have accidentally proven that labels like Manic, Pixie, Dreamgirl, and Pick Misha are really just crab mentality, which is the if I can't have it, neither can anyone else mentality. It's a very bizarre and toxic psychological phenomenon where people will try to undermine the success of others. Because
What the
one
hell's
thing
with the
that's
crabs?
interesting about VTubers is, again, I'm talking about mostly successful VTubers here. A lot of these girls actually make pretty decent money. They don't make as good of money as some people think they do, but for any girl who manages to hit around 100k followers, it can become a pretty stable upper middle class income. And the girls who manage to hit 1 million can also hit the 7-figure mark in their income as well, which is kind of the bizarre irony of the situation. I've often said the biggest problem with modern feminism isn't so much that it defends women's rights, but rather the problem is it doesn't really defend women's rights. It instead tries to entitle women with rights that have nothing to do with property rights, as a form of weird gender socialism to convince women that they're always the victim. You know, going back to the victim-oppressor dichotomy of the whole neo-Marxist ideology. And yet, here they are, shaming successful women because some of those successful women are turning against the woke brigade. It really shows just how toxic the ideology is. But perhaps the worst part about this isn't really something to do with VTubers specifically, and instead just manifests as general bad dating advice directed at young women. If I were to look at both the red pill manosphere and compare it to, say, female dating strategy, one could attempt to argue that, oh, they're both equally bad, they're two sides of the same coin. But that's not actually true, because the red pill community at least gives men basic, decent advice, even if it really can be a little bit misogynist at times.
Yeah, there are a lot of things in the red. There are a lot of things in the red pill community that give men good advice. They tell men what they need to hear, and there is something I don't agree with everything that the red pill thing says, but there are some good advice that it gives to men. That cannot be disputed.
For example, when Andrew Tate says that you should lift and that men should be constantly improving themselves, he's correct. Some of the other things he says may be questionable, but the basics of the advice is correct, which is that you need to be constantly striving to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. Because that way you're focusing on what you have to give, which in turn increases your value in the dating marketplace, or just makes you a higher value partner in general. And you see that within pretty much all of the red pill community. Constantly improving oneself is always a part of the message. And yet when you look at the advice given to young women in places like female dating strategy, or pretty much any dating advice from a sort of neo-Marxist woke feminist lens, this angle of self-improvement doesn't really exist. Going back to how Math puts it, it's stuck at stage 3. They're stuck in the mindset of thinking of relationships only in the context of what you can get out of them. And so the self-improvement element is largely missing from their advice. There's a little bit of it, but it's a drop in the bucket in a sea of entitlement. For example, what is a high-value woman? Well, according to them, a queen. And what is a queen? Well, it's a woman who already knows that she's high value. And if that sounds like circular reasoning, well, because it is. And therefore, the queens deserve high-value men because they just do. And if you're a woman and you dare question that, and you try to think about...
The queens are the same women who, when they get asked the questions, what do you bring to the table? They're the same ones that say, well, I am the table. Yeah, okay, sweetheart. Yeah, you keep thinking that.
About what you can do to improve yourself? Well then, you guessed it, you're a pick-me. Do you question the narrative that all the evil straight white males are in fact a bunch of bastards who only want sex? Well, you're a pick-me. You being nice to men? Nope, can't do that because men just want to sleep with you. And any lady who questions that is, again, you guessed it, a pick-me. And while there is a little bit of correct advice here, like for example, I will never be with a man who cheats on me, it doesn't really matter because that one's kinda obvious. There's nothing in here that teaches young women what they actually need to know, which is how to improve themselves and how to select for men who are actually interested in commitment. Instead, what I see from this ideology seems to start out from the assertion that you are already maximum value, and so ladies are therefore entitled to commitment from men. And depending on whether you are a man or a woman, if you question this, you are either a pick-me or a sexist.
Now, see, I can't fully blame women for thinking... I can't fully blame a lot of women for thinking this, because the reason why a lot of them think this way is because it's how they've been brainwashed through a lot of influencers and a bunch of videos and some parts of society who've just brainwashed them into thinking that they deserve the world without ever having to work for it, just because they are women. So it can't fully blame a lot of these women for thinking that way. It's because they were brainwashed to think this way.
And that is not good advice for young women. Unless, of course, you're trying to write a book that is designed to teach girls how to wake up one day and look in the mirror discovering that they are 50 years old and still single and never married. Thinking that you're entitled to commitment is terrible advice. And if we look at similar subreddits to FDS, by shared user base, we can see that this is exactly what's happening. Dating over 30, dating over 40, child free. This is definitely not the advice that any young lady should be listening to. And then you look at the red pill community for men, and it's a completely different story. There's plenty of self-improvement here. Seduction, bodybuilding, male fashion advice, fitness, social skills. This is actual proper advice.
Don't ever do steroids. Unless you're a medically prescribed steroids, don't ever do them. That is the dumbest way you can do when it comes to trying to gain muscle and shit. It's nothing but bad.
Advice. And the most important difference, though, is that you almost never see men tearing each other down for being successful. And yet it happens all the time in the circles of fake advice given to women, constantly clawing at each other and ripping each other apart for that one time she did something nice for a boy. It's pretty ridiculous. And
it seems a lot of the advice women try to give to other women comes with a backhand as well. It's not always full advice. It's advice that also comes with a backhand. So it's not really that good.
It sadly shows that Western society still has yet to fully learn. There's a legendary article called The Misandry Bubble, written by Imran Khan of The Futurist. And one of the most important parts about it that most people kind of gloss over is this section right here. The basic premise of this article is that men and women are equally valuable, but have different strengths and weaknesses, and different priorities. Society is strongest when men and women have roles that are complementary to each other, rather than of an adversarial nature. Furthermore, when one gender, either one, is mistreated, the other ends up becoming disenfranchised as well. Any society that wishes to sustain itself needs for men and women to get along with each other, or else both parties are going to end up suffering, as the culture of their society becomes more and more toxic. And so when you see progressive pseudo-intellectuals, under the guise of women's rights, trying to demonize men, and telling women that holding herself to any kind of standard is giving in to some kind of sexist stereotype, over time that mentality is doomed to end up harming women just as much as it harms men. And VTubers have gained success by just kind of accidentally breaking out of this mold. They've found a niche market in being fun and entertaining and not hating men. So it's kind of a silly but also very real example of the free market kind of fixing it. But unfortunately there's still a lot of work to do, and the dating market in general needs to be repaired from the damage that has been caused to it by this neo-Marxist regime. And hopefully today I have helped by pointing out just how ridiculous and inconsistent the flawed reasoning that this regime uses really is. Which is important because a lot of these people who believe in this ideology are in fact mainstream corporate journos. And you will see this kind of inconsistent reasoning in mainstream publications. But hopefully you now know how to spot it and not fall for it. And so for now, that is all I have to say. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and if you enjoy my content and want to support me, you can do so on either Ko-Fi, Subscribestar, or by buying some merch, or by again checking out Ground News. Because they really do a great job in showing how the same story can be shown in a completely different light from different sources. But yeah, again, for this video, that is it.
Well, let's just say VTubers are awesome. There is both ups and downs to VTubers, but overall I think they're pretty cool.